I'm standing at my bathroom sink, staring at the empty prescription bottle in disbelief. My life-saving seizure medication has vanished. Again. This was the third time this month, and the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. What I didn't know then was that my family's concern for my independence would lead to a pharmacist calling Adult Protective Services and ultimately saving my life. Sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones keeping you caged. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The steam from my morning shower fogs the bathroom mirror as I tap the orange prescription bottle against my palm. Empty. I check behind the sink, under the cabinet, inside my toiletry bag. Nothing. My Keppra should have lasted another week, but the pills are gone. Again. My stomach tightens with a familiar anxiety, not just from missing my medication, but from the conversation I know is coming. Emily? You'll be late for breakfast. My mother's voice carries up the stairs of our Victorian home in Mapleton, its cheerful tone at odds with the dread spreading through my chest. Coming, Mom? I call back, quickly hiding the empty bottle in my bathrobe pocket. At 32, living with my parents was supposed to be temporary, just until I found a place of my own after returning to my hometown following my divorce last year. Temporary has stretched into 14 months. The kitchen smells of cinnamon and coffee. Mom stands at the stove flipping her famous apple pancakes while Dad reads the newspaper at our oak dining table. A family heirloom like most of the furniture in this house. My younger sister Vanessa sits beside him, scrolling through her phone, her scrubs announcing her early hospital shift. There she is, Dad says, folding his paper with military precision, a habit from his 30 years in the Army. Thought you might sleep through breakfast again. I force a smile, sliding into my usual chair. Wouldn't miss Mom's Sunday pancakes. For 14 months, I've never missed a Sunday breakfast. Not even when my former colleague invited me to a networking brunch that could have reopened doors to my career in architectural design. Family comes first. That's the Harrington motto, repeated so often it might as well be engraved on the mailbox. Mom places a stack of pancakes before me, the butter melting in perfect golden pools. Did you take your medicine this morning, honey? She asks, her voice carrying that special tone of concern she reserves for discussions of my epilepsy. I hesitate, fingering the empty bottle in my pocket. Actually, I seem to be out early again. I just checked. Vanessa and Mom exchange a quick glance I'm not meant to notice. Again? Dad frowns, putting down his coffee. Emily, you need to be more careful with your medication. You know what the neurologist said about consistency. I am careful, I reply, the defensiveness in my voice unmistakable. I take exactly what's prescribed, when it's prescribed. I don't understand how I keep running out early. Vanessa reaches over to pat my hand. You've been under a lot of stress since the divorce. Maybe you're taking them and forgetting? It happens, especially with your condition. My condition. The words hang in the air like an invisible barrier between us. Since my first seizure at 19, my family has treated epilepsy as my defining characteristic. Not a medical condition I manage quite successfully. I'm marking my calendar every time I take a dose, I say, cutting into my pancakes without appetite. I'm positive I'm not taking extras. Mom sighs, that familiar sound of maternal patience stretched thin. Well, we can call Dr. Patterson tomorrow for an early refill. I'm sure he'll understand. I can do it, I say quickly. Too quickly, judging by the look Dad gives me. Let your mother handle it, he says. Remember what happened last time you tried to manage your own medication? 3 days in the hospital isn't something any of us want to repeat. The memory of my last seizure hangs heavy in the room. I'd missed 2 doses while attending a conference in Chicago, the first professional event I'd been allowed to attend alone since my diagnosis. The seizure happened during a presentation. My only memory is waking up in the hospital with my family surrounding my bed, their expressions a mixture of concern and vindication. I'm not 19 anymore, I say quietly. I can call my own doctor. Of course you can, sweetie, Mom says, but her eyes say something different. I just want to help. That's all any of us want. The rest of breakfast passes in strained conversation about Vanessa's nursing shift, Dad's garden plans, and Mom's church committee, Normal family talk that skillfully avoids the elephant in the room. At 32, I'm being treated like a child, and we all know it. After breakfast, I retreat to my room, my childhood bedroom redecorated when I moved back home, but still unmistakably a space that doesn't fully belong to me. The pale blue walls and matching curtains were chosen by Mom. The bookshelf contains volumes carefully selected to avoid triggering stress. Even my desk is positioned where my parents can glance in while passing to check on me. I sit on my bed and pull out my phone, opening my medication tracking app. According to my records, I should have 23 pills left. The bottle was empty. I checked the previous month's log. Similar discrepancy. And the month before that. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A suspicion forms, so uncomfortable I try to push it away. But once the thought takes root, I can't dislodge it. Would my family actually take my medication? To what end? To keep me dependent? The idea seems too calculated, too cruel for the people who have supported me through everything. A soft knock interrupts my thoughts. Mom stands in the doorway, a glass of water in hand. "I brought your vitamins," she says, entering without waiting for an invitation. She places the glass and 2 capsules on my nightstand. The neurologist said they might help with the medication side effects. I've been taking these special vitamins for months now. Mom orders them from a wellness company her friend introduced her to. "Thanks," I say, not reaching for them. She hovers, watching expectantly. "Go ahead and take them now so you don't forget." I pick up the capsules, noticing how her eyes follow my hand. An experiment forms in my mind. Actually, I'm feeling a little nauseated this morning. I'll take them with lunch instead. A flicker of something. Annoyance? Concern? Crosses her face. The instructions say to take them on an empty stomach. They won't work properly otherwise. Since when are vitamins so time-sensitive? I ask, trying to keep my tone light. Emily. My name becomes a reprimand in her mouth. "After everything we've been through with your condition, I'd think you'd trust that I know what's best." Guilt, her most effective tool, works its magic. I take the capsules and swallow them with a sip of water. Was that so hard? She smiles, satisfied. I'm going to call Dr. Patterson first thing tomorrow about that refill. After she leaves, I sit perfectly still, listening to her footsteps descend the stairs. Then I reach for my laptop and begin searching for information on my special vitamins. The packaging is unmarked except for a generic label reading daily supplement, with no list of ingredients. My mother's wellness company doesn't appear in any search results. That afternoon, I tell my parents I'm meeting a former colleague for coffee. Instead, I drive to Lakeside Pharmacy, where my prescriptions are filled. Marcus, the pharmacist who has managed my medications for years, greets me with a smile that fades as I explain my situation. "You're running out early again?" he asks, pulling up my records on his computer. "Emily, this is the 3rd month in a row. Your insurance won't cover another early refill." "I know," I say, leaning closer across the counter and lowering my voice. "Marcus, I think someone might be taking my medication." His fingers pause over the keyboard. "That's a serious concern. Who would have access to your prescriptions?" "I live with my parents and sister," I say, the words difficult to form. "They've always been very involved in my medical care." Marcus studies me for a moment, his professional demeanor slipping to reveal genuine concern. Keppra isn't a medication with street value or recreational use. It's specifically for seizure control. "I know, that's what confuses me. Why would anyone take it?" He glances around to ensure no other customers are within earshot. "Emily, is it possible someone wants to ensure you continue having seizures?" The question hits me like a physical blow. That's my family you're talking about. I understand, and I'm not accusing anyone. But if you're consistently running out early and you're certain you're taking the correct dosage, we need to consider all possibilities. He taps his pen against the counter, thinking. "Here's what we can do. I can provide you with a small emergency supply to get you through until your refill date. But I want you to keep this supply somewhere secure, somewhere only you have access to." I'm not sure such a place exists in my parents' house, I admit. Marcus's expression grows more troubled. Can I make a suggestion? Start keeping a detailed log of your seizure activity, medication timing, and any unusual events. If there's a pattern, it might help clarify what's happening. I nod, grateful for his advice and the small orange bottle he discreetly slides across the counter. Thank you. And Emily, he adds as I turn to leave, if you ever feel unsafe or need help, please call me, day or night. As I drive home, Marcus's words echo in my mind. Would my family deliberately sabotage my health to keep me dependent? The accusation seems monstrous, yet pieces begin clicking into place. My missing medication, the insistence on those unmarked vitamins, the way they've discouraged every attempt at independence since my divorce. I park a block from home and sit in my car, creating a new note in my phone. I title it Medication Log and record today's date, the emergency supply from Marcus and my suspicions. It feels both liberating and terrifying to see the words on screen, as if giving form to my fears makes them more real. When I arrive home, Vanessa's car is gone, called into work for an emergency shift, Mom explains. Dad is in the garden, and Mom bustles around the kitchen preparing dinner. How was coffee with your friend? She asks, not looking up from the vegetables she's chopping. Good, I say vaguely. We might collaborate on a small design project. Her knife pauses mid-chop. A project? You didn't mention anything about working again. It's just something small. Freelance. I can do it from home. Mom's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Honey, I'm not sure that's wise. Remember what Dr. Patterson said about stress triggers? Actually, Dr. Patterson encouraged me to maintain professional skills. He said isolation can be worse for seizure activity than moderate work stress. She resumes chopping, her knife hitting the cutting board with more force than necessary. Well, we'll discuss it with your father at dinner. I'm sure he'll have some thoughts. The rest of the evening unfolds with painful predictability. Dad expresses concerns about my working. Mom suggests I focus on getting well before considering employment. Both remind me of past seizures that occurred during periods of stress. By bedtime, the freelance project has been effectively vetoed without either of them explicitly forbidding it. That night, I hide Marcus's emergency supply in a hollowed-out book. A copy of Jane Eyre I've kept since college, one of the few possessions that survived my family's purge of unnecessary items when I moved home. I take one pill from this secret stash and record it in my new log. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern emerges. I continue taking my regular prescription as scheduled, but also document the rapidly diminishing pill count. Meanwhile, I maintain my emergency supply hidden in the book, taking those pills according to my actual needs. The results are undeniable. My regular prescription disappears at nearly twice the rate it should. The hidden supply remains exactly as expected based on my prescribed dosage. Something is very wrong. During this time, I also begin researching the vitamins Mom insists I take daily. One morning, I pretend to swallow them but slip them into my pocket instead. Later, I drive to the next town over and find a small independent laboratory that offers anonymous testing services. Results will take about 3 days, the technician tells me as she accepts the capsules. Is there a specific compound you're looking for? I hesitate. Sedatives, perhaps? Something that might cause drowsiness or confusion? She makes a note without comment and hands me a receipt with a case number. While waiting for the test results, I continue my log with meticulous detail. Medication counts, vitamin doses, periods of unusual fatigue, conversations about my independence, and visits from Dr. Patterson, who stops by the house rather than seeing me in his office, an arrangement my parents established years ago. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rings with an unknown number. Is this Emily Harrington? A woman asks when I answer. Yes, speaking. This is Sandra Wilson from Riverside Laboratory. You submitted some capsules for testing earlier this week? I step outside onto the porch, glancing around to ensure privacy. Yes, I did. Do you have results? We do, and I wanted to speak with you directly rather than sending an automated report. Her voice turns serious. Ms. Harrington, The capsules you provided contain a combination of compounds including diphenhydramine, that's Benadryl, in significant quantities, along with melatonin and valerian root. My hand tightens around the phone. Would that combination cause drowsiness? Maybe confusion? Absolutely. Taken regularly, this combination would cause chronic drowsiness, potentially mental fogginess, and could mimic some neurological symptoms. It's not something that should be given to someone without their knowledge. I thank her for the information, end the call, and sit on the porch steps trying to process what I've learned. The vitamins aren't vitamins at all. They're sedatives, making me appear more impaired than I am. Combined with the disappearing anti-seizure medication, the picture becomes horrifyingly clear. My family is deliberately manipulating my health. But why? What could they possibly gain from keeping me dependent? The answer comes 2 days later when Dad announces we need to discuss my financial situation at dinner. With practiced concern, he explains that managing my own money might be too stressful, given my condition. He and Mom have consulted with their attorney about establishing a conservatorship, legal guardianship, that would give them control over my finances and medical decisions. It's for your protection, Emily, Mom says, reaching for my hand across the table. After that terrible seizure in Chicago, we realized how vulnerable you are on your own. This way, we can ensure your trust fund from Grandma is properly managed, Dad adds. No more worries about impulsive decisions during periods of instability. Grandma's trust fund. The substantial inheritance I received on my 30th birthday. The money I'd planned to use to restart my life after the divorce. The money currently in an account requiring my signature for any withdrawals over $5,000. The money that would become completely accessible to my parents if they controlled my affairs. I excuse myself from the table, claiming a headache, not entirely a lie, as the revelation has left me physically ill. In my room, I add this new information to my log, the pieces forming a horrifying mosaic, the missing medication ensuring I have seizures, the sedatives making me appear mentally compromised. The convenient house calls from Dr. Patterson, who sees me only in my most drugged state. All leading to a conservatorship that would give my family complete control over my life and my inheritance. That night, I make a decision. The next morning, while Mom runs errands and Dad attends his weekly golf game, I call Marcus at the pharmacy. I need your help, I tell him, my voice shaking despite my resolve. And I need to know if pharmacists are mandated reporters for adult abuse. There's a pause before he answers. We are. Emily, are you safe right now? Temporarily. I'm alone in the house for the next few hours. I take a deep breath. I have evidence that my family has been stealing my medication and giving me sedatives disguised as vitamins. They're trying to make my condition appear worse than it is to get conservatorship of my finances. The silence on the other end stretches for several seconds. Can you come to the pharmacy now? Marcus finally asks. Bring whatever evidence you have. 2 hours later, I sit in a small office at the back of Lakeside Pharmacy with Marcus and a social worker from Adult Protective Services. My medication log is open on the desk between us, along with the laboratory report on the vitamin capsules and 3 months of photos documenting my disappearing medication. This is a clear case of medical abuse, the social worker, Ms. Reeves, says after reviewing my evidence. The deliberate withholding of necessary medication and covert administration of sedatives constitutes criminal behavior, regardless of their relationship to you. What happens now? I ask, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. We have several options, Ms. Reeves explains. We can help you relocate immediately to emergency housing, or we can involve law enforcement to confront your family directly. The choice is yours, but I strongly recommend not returning to that house unprotected. The reality of the situation crashes over me. I'm discussing criminal charges against my own parents and sister. Yet beneath the shock and grief runs a current of validation. I'm not crazy, I'm not imagining things, and most importantly, I'm not as ill as they've made me believe. There's something else you should know, Marcus adds gently. I've reviewed your complete medication history. Prior to moving back in with your parents, Your seizure condition was well controlled with minimal episodes. The increase in seizure activity directly correlates with your return to their home. Ms. Reeves makes a note in her file. This strengthens our case significantly. I stare at the evidence spread across the desk, proof of a methodical campaign to undermine my health and independence. The people who raised me, who claimed to love me most, orchestrated my deterioration for financial gain. The betrayal cuts so deep I can barely breathe through it. I don't want to go back there, I finally say. Not even to pack my things. Ms. Reeves nods. We'll arrange for a police escort to retrieve your essential belongings. In the meantime, we can place you in a secure location while we initiate legal proceedings. As we finalize the immediate safety plan, my phone buzzes with texts from Mom. Where are you? We need to pick up your medication. Dr. Patterson is stopping by for your checkup at 3. Dad and I are worried. Call immediately. I silence the phone and place it face down on the desk. For the first time in years, I won't be answering their summons. For the first time in years, I feel a glimmer of genuine hope breaking through the medicated fog they've kept me in. They'll claim I'm having an episode, I tell Ms. Reeves. They'll say I'm paranoid, that this is part of my condition. Let them try, she responds with calm determination. Medical records don't lie, and neither do laboratory tests. You've documented everything meticulously, Emily. Now let us help you protect yourself. As we leave the pharmacy's back office, Marcus stops me with a gentle touch on my arm. I should have noticed sooner, he says, regret evident in his voice. The pattern was there. You noticed when it mattered, I reply. You're the first person who actually listened to me instead of about me. That made all the difference. Outside, the autumn afternoon feels strangely bright, as if I'm seeing the world through clear glass after years of viewing it through gauze. I know the road ahead will be difficult. Legal proceedings, finding new housing, rebuilding a life deliberately dismantled by those I trusted most. Yet alongside the pain runs a current of something I haven't felt in years, the simple power of being believed. As I get into Ms. Reeves' car, I glance at my phone one last time. 17 missed calls, 5 voicemails, 9 text messages. I turn it off completely and place it in my bag. Ready? Ms. Reeves asks as she starts the engine. I look back at the pharmacy, where a chance conversation with an observant pharmacist has altered the course of my life. Yes, I say with quiet certainty. I've been ready for years. The emergency shelter provided by Adult Protective Services feels both foreign and familiar, a strange blend of institutional efficiency and unexpected comfort. My temporary room contains a narrow bed with surprisingly soft sheets, a small desk, and a window overlooking a courtyard garden. Most importantly, it has a door that locks from the inside, a simple feature that brings me to tears the first night. The average stay here is 2 weeks, Ms. Reeves explains as she helps me settle in. That should give us time to secure more permanent housing and begin legal proceedings. I set my single suitcase, filled with essentials collected during a tense, police-escorted visit to my parents' home, on the bed, and try to imagine what legal proceedings will actually entail. Will I need to testify against my family in court? Will they face criminal charges? The questions swirl like autumn leaves caught in a gust. I know this is overwhelming, Ms. Reeves says, reading my expression. But you're not alone in this process. We have resources, and you have options. Options. The word feels almost decadent after months of having choices systematically removed from my life. That first night in the shelter, I sleep without interruption for nearly 9 hours, the deepest rest I've had in over a year. No one enters my room to check on me. No one insists I take mysterious capsules. No one monitors my movements or questions my decisions. The silence and privacy feel almost disorienting in their completeness. In the morning, I meet with a neurologist arranged by Adult Protective Services, Drive. Leanne Winters, a specialist in epilepsy management with no connection to my family or their network of medical allies. Based on the medication levels in your system and your description of symptoms, I suspect your epilepsy has been significantly mismanaged, Dr. Winters tells me after a thorough examination. With proper medication adherence, many people with your type of epilepsy lead normal lives with minimal restrictions. Normal lives, I repeat, testing the phrase. My family always said I needed constant supervision. Dr. Winters. Expression tightens slightly. That's inconsistent with your medical history. Prior to moving back in with your parents, you maintained employment, lived independently, and managed your condition successfully for years. So I'm not as fragile as they claimed? Not remotely. She hands me a proper prescription for Keppra with her direct contact information. I'm recommending a slightly lower dosage than what Dr. Patterson prescribed. Many patients experience fewer side effects with this adjustment. As Dr. Winters continues explaining my treatment plan, tears begin sliding down my cheeks. She pauses, concerned. I'm sorry. I manage, wiping my face. It's just, this is the first time in years a doctor has spoken directly to me about my own health instead of consulting with my parents first. Her face softens with understanding. Unfortunately, what you've experienced is more common than many realize. Medical gaslighting within families can be particularly devastating because it comes from those we trust most. Over the next several days, a team assembles around me. Ms. Reeves from Adult Protective Services, a legal advocate named Jonathan Ross, a trauma-informed therapist, and Dr. Winters overseeing my medical care. Together, they help me navigate the complex terrain of my new reality. We've filed for an emergency protective order, Jonathan explains during our second meeting. This will legally prevent your family from contacting you while we prepare for a more permanent resolution. They've been trying to reach me constantly, I tell him, scrolling through dozens of messages on my phone. Some plead for my return, claiming they're worried sick. Others contain thinly veiled threats about my, quote, deteriorating mental state, and how I'll regret making these wild accusations. Jonathan's expression remains neutral as he reviews the messages. These actually strengthen our case. The alternating patterns of love bombing and intimidation are classic manipulation tactics. Will I need to see them in court? He sets the phone down carefully. Eventually, yes, but we'll ensure you have protection in place before any confrontation occurs. That evening, I sit cross-legged on my bed with a notepad, attempting to untangle the financial web my family has woven. My inheritance from Grandma amounts to just over $890,000, a sum that would allow me to restart my life completely. But accessing these funds requires navigating accounts my parents helped establish, with their names attached as advisors. A knock at my door interrupts my calculations. It's Diane, another shelter resident around my age, holding 2 mugs of tea. Thought you might like some company? She offers. First weeks are always the hardest. I hesitate, then gesture for her to enter. We've exchanged polite nods in the common areas, but this is our first real conversation. How long have you been here? I ask as she hands me a steaming mug. 3 weeks. She settles into the room's single chair. My situation was complicated. Mine too. I blow across the tea's surface, watching ripples form and dissolve. Family? She nods, understanding the shorthand that connects many shelter residents. Husband and in-laws. Financial abuse mostly, though it escalated toward the end. We sit in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 strangers united by similar betrayals. Does it get easier? I finally ask. Making decisions without second-guessing yourself? Diane considers the question. Slowly, I still catch myself thinking, what would Mike say about this? Before remembering his opinion doesn't matter anymore. She tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. The staff here says that's normal, that we're relearning how to trust our own judgment. Relearning sounds right. Yesterday, I stood in front of the vending machine for 10 minutes, trying to decide what snack to get. Just paralyzed by having to make a choice without someone approving it. She laughs softly. Last week, I bought 5 different kinds of toothpaste because I couldn't decide which one I actually liked versus which one I was told to prefer. Our shared laughter feels healing, a recognition of the absurd lengths to which our autonomy was constrained, and the equally absurd steps toward reclaiming it. There's a support group that meets here on Thursdays. Diane mentions as she prepares to leave. Nothing formal, just people in similar situations talking. Might be worth checking out. I thank her for the invitation and the tea, realizing it's the first social interaction I've had in months, that wasn't orchestrated or monitored by my family. The next morning brings unexpected news. Dr. Patterson has resigned from his medical practice, effective immediately. Marcus, who has become my most steadfast ally, delivers this information during his visit to ensure my new medication regimen is working properly. Word is that the medical board launched an investigation after we filed our report, he explains. Apparently, you weren't his only patient with unusual prescription patterns and convenient family involvement. I absorbed this information with complex emotions. Dr. Patterson had been my neurologist since college. Had he always been complicit in my family's manipulation, or was he gradually drawn into their scheme? Does this strengthen our case? I ask. Marcus nods. Significantly, it suggests a pattern of medical malpractice that extends beyond your situation. Later that day, Jonathan arrives with additional developments. We've obtained your banking records, he says, spreading documents across the small desk. And we've found something concerning. The papers reveal a pattern of transfers from my accounts to my parents and sister. Small amounts taken regularly over months, accumulating to nearly $75,000 since I moved home after my divorce. They had access to your checking account, Jonathan explains, but the trust fund was more protected. That's likely why they pursued the conservatorship, to gain control of the larger sum. I stare at the evidence of systematic theft, feeling strangely detached. After discovering their medication tampering, financial exploitation seems almost predictable. Can we recover any of it? We're working on that. The good news is, we've successfully frozen all your accounts to prevent further withdrawals. Your family no longer has access to any of your funds. That night, I attend the support group Diane mentioned. 8 women and 2 men sit in a circle in the shelter's common room, each with their own story of betrayal by family members or intimate partners. Some situations involve physical abuse, others financial exploitation, many both. Despite the differences in our circumstances, common themes emerge. The systematic dismantling of self-confidence, the careful isolation from support networks, the gradual normalization of outrageous behavior. The hardest part isn't leaving, says a woman named Teresa, whose parents systematically drained her disability payments for years. It's realizing how long you accepted the unacceptable because you loved them. Her words strike a chord so deep I feel it physically. How many red flags had I ignored? How many inconsistencies had I explained away? How many boundaries had I allowed to be trampled because challenging them seemed more painful than compliance? After the meeting, I returned to my room and opened my laptop, recovered during the police-escorted visit to collect my belongings. For the first time in 14 months, I log into my professional design accounts without fear of interruption or questioning. My portfolio remains intact, though woefully outdated. I spend hours updating my resume, reconnecting with former colleagues through professional networks, and researching architectural design positions in cities far from Mapleton. The act of planning a future, my future, on my terms, feels simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Without the fog of unnecessary sedatives, and with my seizure medication properly managed, my thinking is clearer than it's been in months. Ideas flow more easily. Confidence in my professional skills returns in tentative waves. 1 week into my stay at the shelter, a legal bombshell drops. My family has filed a missing persons report claiming I've been abducted by unscrupulous individuals taking advantage of my medical condition. They've also initiated emergency conservatorship proceedings, citing my, quote, mental deterioration and paranoid delusions about family members. This is actually good news. Jonathan tells me when he arrives to discuss our response. They've shown their hand too early and too aggressively. How is this good news? I ask, pacing the small confines of my room. They're trying to declare me mentally incompetent. Yes, and in doing so, they've created a legal record we can definitively refute. He opens his briefcase, extracting a file of documents. Dr. Winters has provided a comprehensive neurological assessment confirming your competence. The laboratory results from your Babier vitamin testing provide clear evidence of covert drugging. And most damning, 3 former patients of Dr. Patterson have come forward with similar stories of familial medical manipulation. I stop pacing, processing this information. Other families were doing this too? Unfortunately, yes. It appears Dr. Patterson had a pattern of accommodating family members who wanted to establish control over relatives with manageable medical conditions, particularly relatives with significant assets. Jonathan arranges the documents methodically. The police have officially closed the missing persons case, now that we've provided proof you're safe and left voluntarily. As for the conservatorship petition, we're requesting an emergency hearing to present our counter-evidence. That evening, I receive an unexpected email from my former design mentor, Catherine Miller, responding to my tentative inquiry about returning to the field. Emily, I've wondered about you for months. Your talent has been sorely missed in the industry. As it happens, our firm has just landed the Westbrook Cultural Center project, right up your alley with those sustainable design elements you always championed. If you're truly available, I'd love to discuss bringing you on as project coordinator. Remote work possible for the right candidate. The timing feels almost too perfect, a door opening just as I'm searching for an exit. I respond immediately, scheduling a video interview for the following day. That night, as I prepare for bed, my phone rings with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answer. Emily? My sister Vanessa's voice catches slightly. Please don't hang up. I remain silent, my hand tightening around the phone. I know you're angry, she continues. You have every right to be. But you need to understand. We were trying to protect you. By drugging me? By stealing my medication? My voice emerges steadier than I feel. By taking my money? It wasn't like that. Her tone shifts to the familiar blend of condescension and concern. You were making reckless decisions after the divorce. We were worried about your judgment. So worried you had to sedate me and cause seizures by hiding my medication? A pause. Nobody caused seizures, that's your condition. A condition that was well managed until I moved home. I take a deep breath, steeling myself against the manipulation I know is coming. Vanessa, I have the laboratory results from those vitamins Mom insisted I take. I have documentation of my missing medication. And I have the banking records showing all of you systematically draining my accounts. Another silence, longer this time. When she speaks again, her voice has hardened. You have no idea what you're doing. Mom and Dad are devastated. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof because of this stunt you're pulling. The guilt trip, so predictable it almost makes me laugh. I'm not coming back, Vanessa. Not to be drugged, not to be controlled, not to be robbed. Fine. Abandon your family. But don't expect open arms when this independent living experiment fails. Which it will, Emily. You know it will. Her voice drops to a hiss. You can't function without us. I end the call without responding, surprised by the calm that washes over me instead of the expected anxiety. My sister's naked attempt at manipulation, stripped of its usual veneer of loving concern, only confirms the rightness of my decision. The next morning brings another development. The police have formally charged my parents and sister with multiple offenses, including financial elder abuse. Despite my relative youth, my epilepsy qualifies me for such protections. Administration of controlled substances without consent, and attempted conservatorship fraud. They were arrested this morning, Jonathan informs me during his daily visit. Released on their own recognizance, but with strict orders not to contact you. The news lands with a complex emotional impact, relief intermingled with grief. Despite everything they've done, some part of me still recoils at the thought of my family in legal jeopardy. What happens next? I ask. They'll be arraigned next week. Given the evidence and their lack of prior criminal history, their attorney will likely pursue a plea agreement. Jonathan arranges the newest documents in my rapidly growing legal file. Meanwhile, we've petitioned for immediate return of the misappropriated funds and are preparing for potential civil litigation to recover damages. I nod, struggling to reconcile the clinical legal terminology with the messy emotional reality. These are my parents, my sister, the people who taught me to ride a bike, who celebrated my graduations, who helped me through my divorce. How do I square those memories with their systematic betrayal? It's normal to feel conflicted, Jonathan says, reading my expression. The bonds between family members run deep, even when those relationships become toxic. Will I have to testify against them? Possibly, though a plea agreement would likely prevent a full trial. He closes his briefcase. But Emily, regardless of the criminal proceedings, you'll need to decide what kind of relationship, if any, you want with your family moving forward. The question follows me through my video interview with Catherine, through dinner in the shelter's communal kitchen, through my evening medication routine, now managed entirely by me, with no mysterious vitamins in sight. What kind of relationship do I want with the people who systematically undermined my health and independence for financial gain? 2 days later, I received the formal job offer from Catherine's firm, project coordinator for the Westbrook Cultural Center, with flexible remote work options for the first 6 months. The salary is generous, the project exciting, the opportunity a perfect re-entry into the profession I love. That same afternoon, Ms. Reeves helps me secure an apartment in a secure building across town, close enough to maintain legal proceedings, far enough to create meaningful separation from my former life. The rent is reasonable, the lease month to month, until I decide on more permanent arrangements. You're making remarkable progress, Ms. Reeves notes as we complete the rental application. Many people take months to reach the stage you've achieved in weeks. I had a life before all this. I remind her. I'm not building from scratch. I'm reclaiming what was taken. As my departure from the shelter approaches, I meet with Dr. Winters for a final consultation. My seizure medication has been adjusted to the optimal level, and I've experienced no episodes since beginning the new regimen. Your neurological function is excellent, she confirms after reviewing my latest test results. With proper medication management, I see no reason why you can't live and work independently without restrictions. What about driving? I ask, thinking of the car keys my parents had confiscated for my safety months ago. Based on your current stability, I'm comfortable clearing you for driving. We'll reassess in 3 months, but I anticipate no issues. She writes the clearance in my medical file. Emily, what happened to you? The medical manipulation, the artificial induction of symptoms, is a severe form of abuse that we're only beginning to properly recognize in the medical community. Your recovery speaks to your remarkable resilience. Resilience. The word echoes as I pack my few belongings on my final day at the shelter. 2 weeks ago, I arrived with a single suitcase and a shattered sense of reality. I leave with clear medical directives, legal protections, employment, housing, and most importantly, a restored trust in my own perceptions. Diane stops by as I'm preparing to depart. Starting fresh? She asks, leaning against the doorframe. Reclaiming? I correct her, using the word that has become my personal mantra. Not starting over, taking back. She smiles. I like that distinction. We exchange contact information with promises to meet for coffee outside the context of the shelter. A normal social interaction between new friends, unmarked by crisis or confinement. As I load my suitcase into the taxi that will take me to my new apartment, I notice my hands are steady, no tremors, no hesitation. My mind is clear, unburdened by unnecessary sedatives or the constant fear of disappointing my family's expectations. The protective order remains in effect, shielding me from direct contact with my parents and sister as the legal proceedings advance. Their attempts to portray me as unstable have backfired spectacularly in the face of medical evidence and financial records. The narrative they so carefully constructed of a helpless daughter requiring their constant intervention has crumbled under scrutiny. Yet as the taxi pulls away from the shelter, I find myself unexpectedly mourning, not for the family that betrayed me, but for the family I thought I had. The parents I believed loved me unconditionally, the sister I trusted with my vulnerabilities, the support system that proved to be a carefully constructed cage. Where to? The driver asks, interrupting my thoughts. I provide the address of my new apartment, then gaze out the window as familiar streets give way to neighborhoods I've rarely visited despite living in Mapleton my entire life. The geographical distance feels symbolic, moving away from the center of my family's influence toward unexplored territory of my own choosing. My phone buzzes with a text from Marcus. All set with your medication at the new location. Delivery scheduled for tomorrow. Remember, no one gets to make decisions about your health but you. I smile at his message, grateful for the unexpected alliance that began with a simple question at a pharmacy counter and culminated in the reclamation of my autonomy. Sometimes freedom arrives through unlikely doorways: a prescription pad, a laboratory test, a social worker's business card. As the taxi approaches my new building, I make a silent promise to myself to honor the clear-thinking, capable woman I was before the manipulation began, and the stronger, more discerning woman I've become through surviving it. The road ahead contains uncertainties and challenges, but for the first time in 14 months, those challenges are authentically mine to face, not manufactured crises designed to reinforce dependency. The taxi stops. I pay the fare, collect my suitcase, and stand for a moment on the sidewalk outside my new home. No one waits inside to monitor my comings and goings. No one will count my pills or question my decisions or undermine my capabilities. The solitude feels not like abandonment, but like possibility. Open space to rediscover who Emily Harrington actually is when not defined by her family's distorted perceptions. I take a deep breath of autumn air, pick up my suitcase, and walk toward the building's entrance. Each step a declaration of independence. Each moment a reclamation of the life that was always rightfully mine. My new apartment becomes a sanctuary over the following weeks. A space entirely my own, decorated according to my preferences, organized to suit my needs. I paint the walls a soft sage green that would have horrified my mother, hang abstract artwork my father would have called disturbing, and arrange furniture in configurations that prioritize my workflow rather than conventional aesthetics. Each decision, no matter how small, feels like reclaiming territory in the map of my life. The first day at my new job arrives with both excitement and anxiety fluttering in my stomach. Though Catherine arranged for me to work remotely initially, I've chosen to visit the office, to physically step back into the professional world I was forced to abandon. Emily! Catherine's warm embrace welcomes me as I enter the sleek offices of Miller & Patel Design Associates. It's been far too long. I return her hug, surprised by how natural it feels despite my months of enforced isolation. Thank you for taking a chance on me after such a long gap in my resume. She waves away my concern. Talent doesn't disappear. Besides, your portfolio speaks for itself. She lowers her voice slightly. And while you didn't provide details, I gathered your absence wasn't entirely voluntary. Something in her tone suggests understanding beyond what I've shared. I make a mental note to ask her about this later, when we're not surrounded by curious colleagues eager to meet the new project coordinator. The morning passes in a blur of introductions, system orientations, and project briefings. The Westbrook Cultural Center is even more exciting than Catherine initially described. A community-focused space incorporating sustainable design elements, accessibility innovations, and cultural preservation aspects. My role involves coordinating between the architectural team, city planners, and community stakeholders, a perfect blend of technical skills and interpersonal engagement. By lunchtime, I'm exhilarated rather than exhausted. My mind feels sharp, ideas flowing freely in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible when not clouded by unnecessary sedatives. I join several colleagues at a nearby cafe, participating in casual conversation without constantly monitoring my words for signs of instability my family might seize upon. You're a natural fit for this team, remarks Sanjay, the lead architect, as we return to the office. Hard to believe you've been away from the field. Sometimes life takes unexpected detours, I reply, the understatement nearly making me laugh. That evening, I return to my apartment and celebrate my first day back in the professional world, with takeout from a Thai restaurant I've been wanting to try. Another small freedom, ordering spicy food my mother would have declared too triggering for my condition. I savor each bite, along with the quiet satisfaction of navigating an entire workday without a single seizure episode or moment of medication-induced brain fog. My phone chimes with a text from Marcus. Check-in day. How's the medication regimen working? I smile at his conscientious follow-up, now a regular part of my weekly routine. Perfect. Clear-headed, focused, and stable. No issues. That's what we like to hear, he responds. Don't forget your appointment with Dr. Winters next week. As if I could forget. My calendar, now managed solely by me, contains carefully scheduled medical appointments, work deadlines, and social engagements. each entry a thread in the tapestry of normal life I'm reweaving. The next morning brings an unexpected development, an email from Jonathan with the subject line, "Plea Agreement Proposal." I open it while sipping my morning coffee, steeling myself for the legal complexities within. "Your family's attorney has approached us with a potential resolution," Jonathan writes. "They're offering full financial restitution plus damages in exchange for reduced criminal charges. This would require your approval but would likely spare you the stress of testifying in court." I read the email twice, trying to process the implications. On one hand, the agreement would ensure recovery of my stolen funds and add substantial compensation for the suffering caused. On the other, it feels somehow insufficient, a monetary settlement for an attempted hijacking of my entire life. Before I can formulate a response, my phone rings with Jonathan's number. "I assumed you'd have questions," he says when I answer. "This type of offer often produces mixed feelings." "It seems too easy," I admit. "After everything they did, they just write a check and move on?" Not quite. The agreement still includes criminal charges, elder abuse, and unlawful administration of controlled substances. They would likely receive probation rather than jail time, but would have permanent criminal records. I consider this, watching morning light shift across my kitchen wall. "And the conservatorship attempt?" "Permanently denied, with a court order preventing any future attempts." Jonathan pauses. "Emily, I should mention that your sister Vanessa has come forward with additional information about your parents' actions. She's offering to testify about their systematic manipulation of your medication and finances." This revelation hits me like a physical jolt. Vanessa? The same sister who told me I couldn't function without them? The very same. According to her statement, she initially participated under your parents' direction, but became increasingly uncomfortable with their methods. Her nursing license is now under review by the state board. I struggle to reconcile this information with my last conversation with Vanessa, her harsh dismissal of my concerns, her confident prediction of my failure. Was her apparent change of heart genuine remorse, or simply self-preservation as the legal consequences mounted? "I'll need time to think about this," I tell Jonathan. "Of course, the offer remains open through the end of next week." His tone softens slightly. "Whatever you decide, remember that your healing doesn't depend on their accountability. You've already reclaimed your life, regardless of the legal outcome." After ending the call, I sit in contemplative silence, watching steam rise from my coffee mug. The offer represents a crossroads, one path leading toward a negotiated resolution with minimal further engagement, the other toward a more protracted legal battle with testimony and cross-examination. Neither feels entirely satisfying. With these thoughts swirling, I head to work, grateful for the distraction of professional challenges. The Westbrook project demands my full attention, as community feedback requires design adjustments to better incorporate local cultural elements. I lose myself in the collaborative problem-solving, the hours passing quickly as our team navigates competing priorities and technical constraints. During a brief lunch break, I receive a text from Diane. "Support group tonight? Special guest speaker on rebuilding family concepts after estrangement. Thought of you." Though I've moved out of the shelter, I've maintained connections with the support group, finding value in both giving and receiving insights from others navigating similar journeys. I confirm my attendance, then return to afternoon meetings with renewed focus. That evening, the support group meets in a community center classroom, a step up from the shelter's common room, with comfortable chairs arranged in the usual circle. I greet familiar faces, including Diane, who saved me a seat. "The speaker is amazing," she whispers as I settle beside her. "She rebuilt her life after her family stole her identity and bankrupted her. Now she runs a nonprofit helping others recover from family financial abuse." The speaker, Dr. Amara Jensen, doesn't look like someone who has survived devastating betrayal. Her confident posture and warm smile project healing, rather than lingering trauma. As she shares her story, parents who opened credit cards in her name while she was studying abroad, a brother who stole her inheritance through forged documents, I recognize patterns that echo through my own experience. "The hardest lesson for me," Dr. Jensen says, meeting each person's gaze in turn, "was accepting that family isn't something we passively receive, but something we actively create. Sometimes that means reimagining family beyond biological connections. Her words resonate deeply, especially as I contemplate the plea agreement awaiting my decision. Have I been approaching the situation with outdated assumptions about family obligations? About what forgiveness should look like? About what I owe the people who share my blood but violated my trust? After the formal presentation, Dr. Jensen takes questions from the group. When my turn comes, I find myself asking the question that's been haunting me since Jonathan's call. How did you handle legal proceedings against your family? Did you pursue full criminal charges or accept a settlement? Dr. Jensen considers me thoughtfully. I pursued full accountability, not out of vengeance but from conviction that true healing requires truth. The settlement they offered felt like another attempt to control the narrative, to define what my suffering was worth. She leans forward slightly. But that was my journey. Yours may require a different approach. The question isn't what's legally available, but what serves your healing. Her answer follows me home, echoing as I prepare for bed in my quiet apartment. What serves my healing? Not what's expected, not what's conventional, not what's easiest, but what genuinely supports my restoration and growth. The next morning, I call Jonathan with my decision. I'll accept the financial restitution, I tell him, but I want the full criminal charges pursued. No reduction in exchange for payment. They need to face the legal consequences of their actions. Jonathan doesn't seem surprised. I'll convey your decision. Are you prepared for this to potentially go to trial? Yes, I say with newfound certainty. I need the truth to be officially acknowledged, not buried under a negotiated compromise. Over the following weeks, my professional life flourishes as the legal proceedings advance in the background. The Westbrook project moves from design development to community presentation phases, with my coordination efforts receiving praise from both the design team and city officials. I find particular satisfaction in the accessibility features I've championed, elements that ensure the cultural center will be truly inclusive for people with various medical conditions and disabilities. This is personal for you, isn't it? Catherine observes one evening as we review the latest accessibility modifications. I nod, sharing more of my story than I've previously revealed. When you've had your independence undermined because of a medical condition, you become acutely aware of how environments can either support or hinder autonomy. Catherine listens with growing understanding. When I finish, she says something unexpected. My sister experienced something similar with her in-laws after her MS diagnosis. They used her condition to justify taking control of everything from her medical decisions to her children's education. What happened? I ask, recognizing the familiar pattern. She fought back, legally, medically, and personally. It was brutal, but necessary. Catherine smiles slightly. She's now running her own business and raising her kids on her terms. Her in-laws are no longer in the picture. This conversation marks a turning point in our professional relationship, deepening it with mutual understanding of how medical conditions can become weapons of control in the wrong hands. Catherine becomes not just a mentor, but an ally who understands the backdrop against which I'm rebuilding my career. As the criminal case progresses, my sister Vanessa's cooperation proves crucial. Her detailed testimony, backed by nursing records she secretly maintained, provides damning evidence of our parents' systematic medical manipulation. The prosecutor handling the case informs me that her information has strengthened the charges significantly. One rainy afternoon, I receive an unexpected request. Vanessa wants to meet, with our respective attorneys present. You don't have to do this, Jonathan reminds me as we prepare for the meeting at his office. All necessary communication can happen through legal channels. I know, I reply, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from my skirt, but I have questions only she can answer. Vanessa arrives with her attorney, looking diminished compared to the confident nurse who once administered my vitamins with professional authority. Dark circles underline her eyes, and her typically immaculate appearance shows signs of neglect. Thank you for agreeing to meet, she begins after the attorneys establish ground rules. I know I don't deserve your time. I study my sister's face, searching for the manipulation I've learned to recognize. Instead, I find what appears to be genuine distress. Why did you decide to cooperate with the prosecution? I asked directly. The last time we spoke, you were fully committed to the family narrative about my instability. Vanessa looks down at her hands. After your escape, that's what Mom and Dad called it, your escape, things escalated quickly. Dad started talking about hiring private investigators to find you and have you committed. Mom became obsessed with accessing your accounts before you could waste your inheritance. She takes a shaky breath. The mask came off completely. I couldn't pretend anymore that this was about protecting you. Yet you participated for months. I observe, keeping my tone neutral. You administered sedatives disguised as vitamins. You helped hide my medication. You're a nurse, Vanessa. You violated every ethical principle of your profession. I know. Her voice breaks slightly. At first, I believed what they told me, that you were making dangerous decisions, that you needed intervention. By the time I realized how calculated it all was, I was already complicit. She meets my gaze directly. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emily. I don't expect that. But you deserve to know that I recognize the harm I caused. The conversation continues for nearly an hour, with Vanessa providing details about how our parents orchestrated their plan, how Dr. Patterson was brought into the scheme, how my medical records were manipulated to support the narrative of my deterioration. Her nursing license has been suspended pending investigation, her marriage strained by the criminal charges, her relationship with our parents fractured by her decision to cooperate with authorities. They've disowned me, she says toward the end of our meeting. Called me a traitor to the family. The irony isn't lost on either of us. The family that claimed absolute loyalty has discarded her for telling the truth. As we prepare to leave, Vanessa asks the question I've been expecting. Can we ever have a relationship again? After all this? I consider her carefully. I don't know. Trust isn't rebuilt through a single conversation or even a helpful testimony. It would require extensive proof over time that you've genuinely changed. She nods, accepting this reality without protest. I understand. For whatever it's worth, I'm proud of the life you're rebuilding. You're stronger than any of us recognized. That evening, I reflect on our meeting while preparing dinner in my kitchen. A simple pasta dish I've been perfecting, another small reclamation of normal life. Vanessa's apparent remorse seems genuine, but experience has taught me to be cautious about accepting appearances at face value. True change reveals itself through consistent actions over time, not emotional declarations in moments of consequence. The criminal case reaches its conclusion more quickly than anticipated. Faced with overwhelming evidence, medical records, financial documentation, laboratory results from the vitamin testing, and testimony from both Vanessa and Dr. Patterson, who accepted a plea deal in exchange for cooperation. My parents enter guilty pleas to all charges. The sentencing hearing arrives on a crisp autumn morning, almost exactly 1 year after I overheard their conversation about accessing my trust fund. I dress carefully in a tailored navy suit that projects the professional competence they tried so hard to undermine. My hair arranged in a simple style that requires no assistance. My medication taken independently according to my own carefully maintained schedule. The courtroom feels simultaneously intimate and vast as I take my seat beside Jonathan. My parents sit at the defense table, backs rigid with what might be dignity or denial. They don't turn to look at me, though I feel the weight of their awareness pressing against my skin. When the judge invites me to make a victim impact statement, I approach the podium with steady steps, the prepared document crisp in my hands. I've written and rewritten these words countless times, searching for the perfect balance between factual accounting and emotional truth. Your Honor, I begin, my voice clear in the hushed courtroom. I stand before you today not just as a victim of exploitation, but as a survivor of a calculated campaign to undermine my health, independence, and financial security. The defendants, my parents, systematically created medical crises by withholding necessary medication, administered sedatives without my knowledge or consent, isolated me from professional and social connections, and attempted to gain control of my substantial inheritance through fraudulent claims about my competence. I detail the specific methods they employed, the progression of their scheme, and the profound impacts on my physical and psychological well-being. Throughout my statement, I maintained direct eye contact with the judge, refusing to give my parents the satisfaction of seeing me emotionally undone. The most devastating aspect of this crime was not the financial theft or even the medical manipulation. I continue, approaching the conclusion of my statement. It was the betrayal of the fundamental trust between parent and child. These defendants didn't simply steal money or medication. They attempted to steal my future, my autonomy, and my truth. They weaponized love and concern to disguise exploitation and control. I pause, allowing the words to settle in the silent courtroom before delivering my final thoughts. I don't seek vengeance through this legal process. I seek acknowledgement of the truth and appropriate consequences that reflect the severity of these violations. Most importantly, I seek protection for myself and for others who might be vulnerable to similar exploitation by those claiming to act out of love. As I return to my seat, I allow myself one glance toward my parents. My father stares straight ahead, jaw clenched in familiar stubbornness. My mother's eyes meet mine briefly, her expression unreadable behind a carefully composed mask of maternal concern, the same expression she wore while feeding me sedatives disguised as health supplements. The judge's sentence reflects the serious nature of the crimes: 3 years of incarceration, suspended in favor of 5 years, probation with strict conditions, including no contact with me, mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment, community service in elder care facilities, and full financial restitution plus punitive damages. Additionally, they are permanently barred from serving as guardians, conservators, or healthcare proxies for any vulnerable adult. This court takes family-based exploitation extremely seriously. The judge states during her sentencing remarks, the defendants abused not only their daughter's trust but the inherent power imbalance in the parent-child relationship. The calculated nature of these actions, carried out over months against a person with a medical condition, merits significant consequences. As the hearing concludes and the courtroom begins to empty, I remain seated, absorbing the finality of this chapter. The legal battle is over. The truth has been officially acknowledged. Justice, as defined by the legal system, has been served. Yet closure feels more complex than I anticipated. The parents who raised me, who taught me to ride a bike and kissed my scraped knees and celebrated my academic achievements, are now convicted criminals, legally prohibited from contacting me. The family unit I was born into has been irreparably fractured. The narrative of my childhood has been permanently altered by the revelation of what they were capable of doing. Jonathan places a gentle hand on my shoulder. You did it, Emily. Every step of the way you chose truth over comfort, accountability over easy resolution. That takes remarkable courage. Outside the courthouse, autumn leaves dance across the steps in swirls of gold and crimson. I take a deep breath of the crisp air, feeling something shift inside me. Not the complete healing of all wounds, but the settlement of one significant piece into its proper place. My phone buzzes with messages of support from the network I've rebuilt. Catherine confirming our afternoon meeting about the Westbrook project, Diane checking in from her new apartment across town, Dr. Winters congratulating me on the case's resolution, Marcus sending his typical straightforward encouragement. These connections, professional, medical, social, form the foundation of my reconstructed life. Not replacements for family in the traditional sense, but authentic relationships built on mutual respect, rather than biological obligation or power dynamics. As I descend the courthouse steps toward whatever comes next, I realize that the question Dr. Jensen posed weeks ago has been answered through my actions rather than my deliberations. What serves my healing? Truth, accountability, self-determination, and the courage to rebuild not just what was lost but something stronger and more authentic than what came before. The future stretches before me. Not a prescribed path determined by others, manipulation, but an open road of my own choosing, navigated with clear eyes and a steady hand on the wheel of my own life. 3 years after the courtroom verdict, I stand on the rooftop terrace of the completed Westbrook Cultural Center, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of amber and rose. The grand opening celebration swirls around me, city officials mingling with community leaders, design team members explaining architectural features to impress donors, children exploring the interactive art installations we incorporated into the open spaces. There she is, Catherine calls, approaching with 2 champagne flutes. The woman who transformed this project from impressive to extraordinary. I accept the offered glass with a smile. Hardly single-handed. This was the definition of collaborative success. Don't downplay your contributions, she admonishes gently. Your accessibility innovations have already been adopted as standards for 3 other cultural centers across the country. The ADA Compliance Office is using your designs as exemplary case studies. Pride warms my chest as I survey the space that evolved from concept to reality under my coordination. What began as a simple building project expanded into a truly inclusive community hub, where people of all abilities can engage with art, culture, and each other without barriers. My personal experience with disability and dependency informed every decision, transforming potential obstacles into opportunities for innovative design. The sensory retreat spaces were pure genius, Catherine continues, gesturing toward the small, acoustically controlled rooms we scattered throughout the building, peaceful havens, where visitors overwhelmed by stimulation can decompress without leaving the center. Especially the one with the calibrated lighting options for migraine sufferers and seizure-sensitive visitors. Experience is a powerful teacher, I reply, thinking of how my own seizure condition shaped my understanding of environmental triggers and safety features. What my family once used to control me, I've repurposed as insight to liberate others. The mayor approaches, hand extended in congratulation. Ms. Harrington, the accessibility consultants can't stop raving about your work. Would you consider joining our city planning committee as an advisory member? We're revamping public spaces throughout Mapleton, and your perspective would be invaluable. Before I can respond, my phone vibrates with a text from Marcus. Turn on Channel 7 News when you get a chance. Big story breaking about medical guardianship reform. Your case is referenced. I excuse myself momentarily, finding a quiet corner to check the news app on my phone. The headline sends a jolt through me. State legislature passes Emily's Law reforming conservatorship standards. Below it, a subheading explains, new protections named after victim of family medical exploitation require stricter oversight of guardian appointments and medical decision-making. The article details how my case inspired legislation creating additional safeguards for vulnerable adults with manageable medical conditions, including mandatory independent medical evaluations, stricter standards for proving incapacity, and regular court review of my testimony before the State Judiciary Committee last year, a terrifying but necessary step outside my comfort zone, directly shaped key provisions of the law. I return to the celebration with renewed perspective. The building around me represents one kind of legacy, concrete and glass-shaped to welcome all bodies and minds. The legislation represents another, systemic change protecting others from the manipulation I experienced. Both emerged from the darkest chapter of my life, transformed into tools for collective good. Everything okay? Catherine asks as I rejoin her. Better than okay, I reply, sharing the news about the legislation. Sometimes I still can't believe how far things have come. From having your medication hidden to having a law named after you, she says with admiration. That's what I call a redemption arc. As the evening progresses, I circulate through the crowd, accepting congratulations from colleagues and community members. No one here knows my full story. The courtroom drama, the medical manipulation, the family betrayal. To them, I'm simply Emily Harrington, the talented project coordinator whose innovative approach to accessibility elevated an already impressive cultural center. This partial anonymity feels like freedom rather than erasure. My past informs, but doesn't define me. My medical condition remains a reality I manage, not a limitation that controls my opportunities or relationships. Near midnight, as the celebration winds down, I find myself alone on the terrace, savoring the quiet after hours of social engagement. The city lights sparkle below, a constellation of human connection stretched across the darkness. From this vantage point, I can see the shelter where I spent those crucial weeks after escaping my parents' home, a humble building that housed the beginning of my reclamation. My phone buzzes with a text from Diane. Congrats on opening night. Saw the news about the legislation too. Double victory. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate? I smile, confirming our plans. Diane has become one of my closest friends, our connection forged in crisis, but sustained by genuine compatibility and shared values. After completing her degree in social work, she now counsels survivors of family financial abuse, occasionally inviting me to speak at her support groups about medical manipulation and recovery. As I prepare to leave, Marcus calls, an unusual occurrence at this hour. Sorry for the late call, he says when I answer. I figured you'd want to know immediately. Your sister Vanessa reached out to the pharmacy today asking about you. My breath catches. What did she want? Nothing specific, just asked if I knew how you were doing. I didn't share any information, of course. He pauses. She mentioned she's completed her court-mandated therapy and community service, said she's been recertified as a nurse but chose to work in addiction recovery instead of returning to traditional healthcare. I absorbed this information silently. In the 3 years since the trial, Vanessa has respected the no-contact order meticulously. This indirect inquiry represents her first attempt at connection, however tentative. Thanks for letting me know, I tell Marcus. I appreciate you maintaining boundaries. Always, your safety comes first. His voice softens slightly. But if you ever wanted to explore communication on your terms, I could help establish appropriate protocols. After ending the call, I remain on the terrace, contemplating this unexpected development. The possibility of contact with Vanessa stirs complex emotions: caution born of betrayal, curiosity about her journey, uncertainty about my own capacity for forgiveness or reconciliation. Dr. Jensen's words from years ago return to me. Family isn't something we passively receive, but something we actively create. In the aftermath of the trial, I've built a chosen family of friends, colleagues, and allies. Does that family have room for a sister who participated in my exploitation but later helped bring the truth to light? Does healing require reconnection, or is the boundary itself a form of health? These questions follow me home to my downtown apartment, a spacious loft I purchased last year with the restitution funds and my steadily growing salary. The space reflects both my professional success and personal healing. Open concept with minimal visual barriers, furnishings arranged for maximum mobility, artwork selected for its calming properties, and most importantly, security features that ensure absolute control over who enters my space. The next morning, I meet with my current neurologist, not Dr. Winters, who relocated to another state, but Dr. Tamika Reed, a specialist in epilepsy management, who approaches my care with refreshing directness and respect for my autonomy. Your levels look excellent, she confirms, reviewing my latest test results. Any episodes since our last appointment? One minor one after I worked 72 hours straight on the cultural center opening. I admit, completely predictable and my own fault for ignoring sleep requirements. Rather than scolding, Dr. Reed nods with understanding. Big project completions can throw anyone off their routine. The important thing is you recognized the trigger and presumably adjusted accordingly. Absolutely. Back to regular sleep schedule and stress management techniques. I appreciate her matter-of-fact approach, acknowledging the seizure without catastrophizing it, treating it as a manageable aspect of my health, rather than a defining characteristic of my identity. Perfect. Otherwise, I'm seeing nothing concerning in your results or reported symptoms. She updates my chart efficiently. Any questions or concerns from your end? I hesitate, then share the news about Vanessa's indirect contact. I'm not sure if considering communication with my sister might create unhealthy stress. From a neurological perspective, would reconnection pose risks to my stability? Dr. Reed considers this thoughtfully. Medically speaking, your condition is well controlled. You have excellent self-awareness about triggers and consistent medication adherence. From a purely neurological standpoint, you're capable of managing potentially stressful interactions. She removes her glasses, shifting from clinical assessment to more personal guidance. That said, emotional health affects neurological function. Any reconnection would need careful boundaries and perhaps professional support. This isn't a purely medical decision but a holistic life choice. I appreciate her balanced perspective, acknowledging both my medical capacity and the broader well-being considerations. Dr. Reed represents everything Dr. Patterson wasn't: transparent, respectful of my agency, and focused on empowering rather than controlling me. That evening, Diane and I meet at Riversong, our favorite restaurant overlooking the city waterfront. As promised, we're celebrating both the cultural center opening and the passage of Emily's Law, achievements that feel simultaneously personal and larger than myself. To changing the world one building and one law at a time, Diane toasts, raising her glass. I laugh, clinking my glass against hers. Hardly changing the world, just making small improvements to small corners of it. Don't diminish impact, she counters, echoing Catherine's earlier sentiment. Every person who visits that cultural center without facing barriers is experiencing a changed world. Every vulnerable adult protected by that legislation has a different future because of your courage. Her words remind me how far I've traveled from the woman who stood trembling in a pharmacy 3 years ago, desperate for someone to believe that her family was sabotaging her health. That woman could barely imagine surviving, let alone thriving enough to help others. Over dinner, I share Marcus's call about Vanessa's inquiry, seeking Diane's perspective as both friend and professional counselor. What do you want? She asks simply. Not what you think you should want or what others might expect. What do you authentically desire regarding your sister? The question cuts through layers of complexity to the essential core. What do I want? Not obligation, not convention, not external validation, but my own truth. Information. I realize aloud. I want to understand her journey since the trial, not for reconciliation necessarily, but for completion of the narrative. There are still missing pieces that only she can provide. Diane nods. That's a valid starting point. Information gathering rather than relationship restoration. It establishes you as the one setting terms and boundaries. But is it safe? I ask, the old fear flickering briefly. Or am I opening a door better left closed? Safety isn't just absence of risk, it's presence of agency, Diane replies. You're not the same person who escaped that house 3 years ago. You have resources, support systems, and most importantly, clear recognition of manipulation tactics. The question isn't whether contact is inherently safe or dangerous, but whether you feel equipped to engage on your terms and disengage if necessary. Her framing helps clarify my thinking. The power dynamic has fundamentally shifted. The news lands differently than I might have expected. Not with vindication or indifference, but with a complex sorrow for all that was lost. Not just through her betrayal, but through the distorted values that led her to place financial gain above her daughter's well-being and autonomy. After careful consideration and consultation with my therapist, I decide not to break the no-contact order, even in these circumstances. The risk of manipulation remains too high, the potential for reopening healing wounds too great. Instead, I send Vanessa a brief note acknowledging the information and wishing her strength during the difficult months ahead. 2 months later, I receive notice of our mother's passing through Jonathan's office, a simple death announcement rather than a request for attendance at services. I mark the occasion privately, lighting a candle on my balcony for the mother I thought I had, rather than the woman revealed through criminal proceedings and testimony. The grief feels distant yet genuine, mourning not just her physical death, but the death of the maternal relationship that occurred years earlier when her exploitation came to light. I arrange for flowers to be sent to the funeral service without a card, an anonymous acknowledgement of a complicated history. Life continues its forward momentum. The Westbrook Cultural Center thrives, becoming a model for inclusive public spaces across the region. My role expands to include consulting on other accessibility projects, translating my personal experience into professional expertise that benefits countless others with medical conditions and disabilities. My health remains stable, managed through consistent medication, regular neurological monitoring, and lifestyle choices that support rather than undermine my well-being. Seizures occur occasionally, a reality of my neurological condition, but they're infrequent and handled with the matter-of-fact accommodation I might give any other health consideration. 1 year after my mother's passing, I receive a more substantial letter from Vanessa. Our father has moved to assisted living, his health declining rapidly after our mother's death. She has been overseeing his care while maintaining the boundaries established by the court order. He asks about you sometimes, she writes. I provide no information beyond confirming you're alive and well, as permitted by the legal parameters. His cognitive function is diminishing, which the doctors attribute partly to vascular dementia. He often seems confused about past events and relationships. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.